Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome back to another Lovecraft Country recap show over on the FilmSpeak channel. I'm, of course, your host, Griffin Schiller. And if you're new here, this is the show where we basically break down the latest episodes of HBO's latest hit series, Lovecraft Country. Today, we're going to be talking about Lovecraft Country season 1, episode 2, titled Whitey's on the Moon. A lot of shit went down in this episode. We have a lot to dissect, and I think it's going to be kind of polarizing for the masses out there. So we have a lot to get into regarding it. But first of all, before we get started here, if this is your first time checking out one of the videos here over on FilmSpeak, consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy weekly TV recaps, movie reviews, and just want to be part of the conversation regarding movies and pop culture and entertainment. We'd love to have you over here. So, and then also let me know your thoughts and opinions on tonight's episode down in the comment section below. It's going to be a really interesting one to discuss. So I'm really curious to see what you all think about it. But I don't do these alone. Of course, I am joined by two amazing guests. First of all, Miss Gretchen Smail, my good friend. You remember her from the Westworld after shows. She's a staff writer over at Bustle. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm a little tired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty. This is like, I swear to God, it's like the 5th or 6th stream I've done over the course of the weekend. I'm about ready to clock out. Like I'm like, after this, actually, shit, I have to do another one after this for Nosferatu. So that's,
look at you.
It never ends. But you're like, we were talking a little bit beforehand, but you're like kind of surrounded by the fires right now. So
yeah. There's one up in Napa. There's one I think by Fairfield. There's one past San Francisco, like close to Santa Cruz, and they're just kind of like blowing at all hours. You know, our air quality has been terrible, so we're just kind of cooped up indoors with no AC. So that's been very fun. You know, exactly how I want to spend my summer. You know.
Yeah, right. No, I definitely don't envy you. I was in Santa Barbara for a couple days earlier in the week, and I think the day we were leaving was the day that it really started to get like ashy, and there was like definitely some fires in the area, and it just like completely changed the mood of the weather and everything. It was just like,
it's all gray. It smells hot.
It sucks. And listen, I'm someone who likes overcast, but I like proper overcast, not overcast caused by ash in the air.
Climate change and destruction, you know?
Yeah, right, exactly. And of course, we're also joined by Elliott from Movie Files. Dude, great to have you back here, man. How are you doing?
Hey, man, doing good, Gretchen. I'm sorry to hear what you're going through right now. I guess it's just 2020, right? I think let's just add that to the list of just crazy things.
I know. I'm like, go ahead. Throw it all on right now.
Yeah. No, we're so glad to be back talking Lovecraft Country, episode 2.
Yeah,
season
dude.
Finale.
Right.
We'll talk about that ending and deaths and moving on up and all that stuff. Yeah,
for sure. Guys, if you are tuning into this live, I know we're starting a little bit before the episode has finished, so maybe consider finishing the episode and then come back and watching this, because we're going to be getting into all sorts of spoilers and whatnot. So you have been warned there. So yeah, let's kind of touch on that, Elliott, bringing up the fact that you felt that this kind of resembled a season finale or a mid-season finale is sort of what I would equate it to. I guess let's start with you. What were your overall thoughts of the episode?
Very confused. So I'll be honest with you. I've seen the episode twice now, last week, and then I watched it last night in preparation for this, just to kind of refresh myself on everything. But I'm gravitating that I like this episode. That first, we talked about it last week, and the ratings have been up. Everyone loved the pilot. That was like a fantastic pilot episode to really set the tone, meet the characters. Yeah. But then this episode, just from jump, the moving on up, kind of like, oh, okay, this is jarring. Like the last time we saw you guys, you were covered in blood in front of a lawn, clueless of what happened. But now we're just like, like the tone was just so like kind of jarring to me. And then, obviously we'll talk about the episode, but I just felt like the introduction of William and Christina, interesting characters, but they just seem to be kind of there. The monsters, the birth of a monster. It just seemed like there was a lot being thrown at us. It was just too juxtaposed to what we got last week. It was just like a lot being thrown at the audience. It's just like, whoa, can we slow down a little bit? Because from episodes 1 and 2, you normally get like a dip in quality sometimes, just because sometimes episode 1 was just fantastic, but they just kept throwing everything at us. And I don't know how well I took that.
Yeah, for sure. Gretchen?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Jarring is the best way to describe this episode.
Yeah.
To me, it was just an exposition dump. You learned a lot in a really short amount of time, but it's not clear if any of that matters, like how much is like going to be relevant going forward. For example, we learned something about one character during like a nightmare sequence, but then by the end of that episode, that character is maybe not coming back. So it's like, what was the point of learning that info? And then, of course, all the magic, you don't know what the limits of all of that is yet. And then I don't know, how much do we want to give away right at the beginning? I was going to say.
Go for it. Just feel free to jump right in.
A building is destroyed.
Yeah, right. Of course.
And,
the lodge,
and so it's like everything that could have happened there and everything around the Ardham town, is that just gone from the story now? Are we just not returning to this weird village ever again? And it just seems like a missed opportunity to really dig in to the weirdness of this area.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going off of that, I feel like this was an episode that we needed like 2 or 3 episodes in order to get here. Because it's like we have our characters on the journey. The quest is to find Tick's dad. He got the letter, obviously, that his dad is in danger and he wants to go save him. And so that's the adventure that they go on. And we assume, okay, they'll probably find the dad somewhere around the mid-season finale. No, he finds his dad in episode 2. Yep. And so that leaves me kind of wondering what is the central story here? Like, what is going to happen sort of going forward? And I don't know. I feel like they kind of like, they played their hand way too soon. And I feel like if there were like 2 or 3 episodes before this one, where they can kind of, maybe Tick has a conversation with George about his heritage or something like that. I don't know. We get a chance to understand their, the visions they had in the lodge, which are, I guess it would be their fears or their, their inner demons or whatever. Yeah. That part was still a little kind of unclear to me, but I feel like if we had more time to understand those things, so that when we get to this episode and then we get the visions and the real mystical stuff going on, it would have been way more impactful. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, we only got a very, very brief taste of it in that first episode, even to the point where like Leti's vision in this episode didn't quite connect with me. I wasn't quite sure where they were going with that. I don't know how both of you felt about that.
Yeah, that scene was weird. Snakes coming out of the pants. I didn't know to take that scene as like she fears to fall in love with someone. She doesn't want to fall in love with Atticus, Tick. I'm very confused by that because, again, she was telling us a story about her mom, and her mom had men coming in and out of the door, and they didn't have the relationship that she would wanted to have with her mom. So I don't know if like I said, just relationship fears, if that's her fear. Uncle George, that is just a correction. That was Tick's mom that he was dancing with, right? And the same woman from the pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess his fear of not falling in love with the woman that he was supposed to be with, and she decides to date his brother, Montrose. I was confused by that. The only one that was clear was just like Atticus, that this woman that we haven't met yet comes out. We heard her on the telephone last week. We saw her in his vision on the war field. So this confusion is with that scene.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, Gretchen. What did you sort of make of the visions there?
The same as Elliott. I don't know. It wasn't a consistent theme, like he said. It's just I assumed that. So Gia, the Korean woman, she's an addition from the book. So I assumed maybe he fell in love with her and then had to leave her, or he killed her and now he's haunted by it. But I don't see how that has the same through line as like maybe Leti's like a virgin and afraid of sex, and maybe George is, I don't know. His wasn't even a nightmare. His wasn't even a nightmare. He was having this nice moment with a ghost. I'm like, well, that's nice. What, like, how did they decide what everyone gets in their own room? So it just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess it could also be like regret in a certain way, like Tick regrets killing that Korean woman, because I'm assuming that he is a Korean War veteran. Just based off
you mentioned that.
Okay, yeah, which then that makes a little bit more sense. And then with with Leti, I don't know, maybe she did they probably have a history or something together that we just haven't seen yet. Again, like that would have been.
They should have told us.
They should have that
earlier.
100%. Because right now, going it. Yeah, it's like we only know that they're friends or they're childhood friends, and they haven't seen each other for a little while. And so like going into this episode, and we get that, and it's like, whoa, okay, do they have a history? Like that would have been like a really impactful moment had they built up to it. And so that was that I don't know, that whole vision sequence didn't quite work for me, just because we haven't been with the characters for that long, so we don't understand these their troubled past or the issues that they have. And then on top of that, Uncle George gets killed at the end of this, so we don't even see resolution to the end of his arc, So I really don't understand the thought process of placing this episode where they did, and then the structure of it. But I do have a question for you, Gretchen, because you have read the book, I take it.
I'm reading the book, yeah.
You're reading the book, okay.
Spoiler, just in case someone corrects me, I'm still reading it.
So Elliott and I have not read the book, so we have no idea what's to come in there. So is this sort of the chronology of the book, the way that this show is sort of going down right now?
Yes, yeah, and I think the issues with this episode stems from the book, because he wrote the first chapter is just called Lovecraft Country, and it's the longest one. And they basically follow it, with the exception of the nightmares. I don't think that's in the book, but they go to this lodge, they meet Samuel, and they defeat him by the end of this episode. And then all the episodes, or all the chapters after that, it's a different character, and it's a very different genre, I would say. So it's really like, you could probably read some of the chapters out of order and it wouldn't affect the story that much. So it is true to the source material, but I will say, when you're adapting it, like, does that work for TV? I don't know if it does, because it's like, it feels really weird to like introduce a big bad and then just get rid of him, because wouldn't you want to really sit with him for a while? And then move on to the more like episodic type stories, focus on different characters. It just seems like a missed opportunity to, I don't know, make it like a bigger Get Out with this creepy family and this daughter who claims she's this liberal character, but she's not helping him.
That's exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because I got major Get Out vibes from this. In fact, I would say it was perhaps too much indebted to Get Out. It didn't really try to do anything new, but it didn't take that sort of premise in like put a new spin on it. It was, I mean, it put like, mysticism in it and biblical stuff in it, but I can't say that, like, I don't know. It just felt like, okay, let's redo Get Out, but for a single episode of television. And I don't know. It was just a weird direction to go in,
Yeah. And even from like just going back to the beginning of the episode again, just from them, the memory loss thing kind of caught me completely off guard.
Yeah.
We didn't know about the magic elements of the show, which, as we kind of talked about last week, it explains the whole car flipping, how she was able to stop the car without hitting their car and it flipped over there. So there's magic involved. But yeah, just from their loss of memory. And I was actually more intrigued of them taking the route of Atticus having PTSD, and he was making up potentially that attack that they saw. And I thought that would have been a more interesting storyline than like in this scene. I love Jonathan Majors as an actor, but the scene when he's talking to Christina, he's like, it's magic. It's magic. You're using magic. Like, I thought that scene was so weird, the way like they described magic in this universe. But yeah, that I would have preferred if he would have had PTSD, maybe making this up, but it wasn't the case. It was magic in monsters that they did see.
Yeah, they took it in a more literal sense, but anyway, oh sorry, Gretchen, go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna say. And I think when you interpret things so literally in a horror movie or horror show, it takes away so much of the dread and the mysticism and the creeping feel of it. Like, I don't want that all explained to me within the second episode. Like, maybe it's because I like watch too many A24 films, but I want it to be really weird. I just want to see the scene of her like bringing this monster out of this cow.
Like,
creepy music. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
that was a really weird moment too, because it was just like a completely normal cow that gave
Yeah.
birth to this. It was one of this Lovecraftian monsters, and I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. But I guess going through that, there was a lot of, I think, interesting things that the episode did do well.
For sure.
Like I think when the more it sat with me, the more I kind of appreciated it, even though I still don't think it really works. And I think it's actually it's honestly a horrible second episode, because I feel like it's going to turn so many people off of the show who loved that first episode.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe people are eating it up right now, but I don't know. It was one of those where it's like the more I was like digging into it, I liked the sort of commentary, this group of like white people that are sort of like taking religion that was never theirs to begin with, and then sort of like making it their own and saying like, it is like, we are the only people who can, do these things. It's like, it's all ours. So basically, using the work of, minorities and slaves to basically like, hey, this is our religion, and stuff like that. And I don't know. I thought that again, this show has no problem when it comes to making like really powerful social commentary. So, even in this episode, for all its faults, I think it works. But Elliott, you and I were talking last week, and you brought up something really interesting, which had to do with the episode's title, which is Whitey on the Moon. Yeah. Which is based off of I guess it's like a poem.
If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, guys. I believe it's a 1970 spoken poem. The artist is slipping my mind. I believe
Gil Heron.
Gil, yes, I believe. Yeah, Gil Scott Heron, I believe is his name, and it was inspired by Elrich Cleaver, who, during the times that we were trying to get on the moon, his whole thing was it's a distraction for America spending so much time on getting us on the moon, but we're not focused on the real issues that are in front of us as Americans, the injustices and racism and, segregation, things of that nature. But, it was just the whole point is distraction. And I think that's where this episode may play into that title, Whitey's on the Moon, as we just talked about, for the biblical sense of, right, Samuel using Atticus as a distraction to get his end game, right? He wants to go to Adam of Eden to live eternally, right? He wants to live forever, him and his sons of Adam. So the title was really cool. I thought that that spoken poem was really kind of powerful. That's where I kind of really liked the episode. That back half to me is the strongest part of the episode. And that reaction to Atticus and Uncle George dying. But the meaning of that was really powerful in the sense of, again, that spoken poem and how, like you just said, Griffin, they're using Atticus as a pawn, right? And distracting, the issues that they can use their powers to save people, to stop segregation, to stop racism. Yeah. They would rather go to the, across these portal to live a better life. So,
no, exactly. And before we get to Gretchen, I just thought the setting of it, this like secluded village that is like, they realistically have no idea what's going on in the outside world, and yet they're living in the thick of like Jim Crow America. Right. And you're right, it's just like they're like so concerned with eternal life and like going to the Garden of Eden and whatever, that they're just like, they have all this power and the ability to like put a stop to this, but they're just like completely neglecting their human responsibility to do so. But Gretchen, I guess from just like a subtextual standpoint, what did you like enjoy what they were kind of doing with this episode?
Yeah, I really liked Elliott's breakdown because I didn't think of it that way. But when he was talking, it made me think of how Christina is doing the exact same thing Samuel's doing to Tick, basically using him to get out from her station. You can tell she's not happy being his daughter. He doesn't respect her because she's a woman. And I actually really like that they changed her to Christina, because in the book it's Caleb. And in the book, it's not clear why, maybe I read it too fast, but it's not clear why Samuel doesn't use his son Caleb for the ceremony. But in the show, it's very obvious why he doesn't use Christina. It's because she's a woman. Yeah. So it really explains why Tick is there. So I really like that addition. And I like the idea that she sees herself as oppressed in some ways compared to the white men, but obviously she is so much more privileged than Tick and Leti and George, and she uses them at will, and she pretends she's their friend, and yet at the key moments, like when they're both shot, Leti and George, she just kind of stands there and she's like, well, you broke the rules. So
yeah.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that wasn't something that I was inherently thinking about while watching it. But that was like, that's actually a really nice sort of like commentary on just like, white female privilege. Because, sometimes like we all know about the Karens in the world, right? So it's
movie
like,
coming soon, apparently. For that too.
Right,
yeah.
the Karen movie coming. Oh God, I can't believe that's actually happening. So like that's sort of like a great instance of just like the show having like layers upon layers of just like really relevant like social commentary. Again, like that's not going to be an issue with a show like this, but it's just nice to see them really going that extra mile. What did you kind of make of the lore sort of going on here, and like in Tick's lineage and in his relationship to the sons of Adam or whatnot? I mean, obviously we kind of got the gist that like, his mom or his ancestor was a slave, that Titus, I forget what his name was.
Titus.
Yeah, Titus.
Birthright.
Yeah. Right. Obviously he took a liking to and like freed her. So she like bore his children and stuff like that, and Tick is a descendant of that. I guess like, how do you think that's going to come back to play in this episode? It just feels like that was such a massive reveal that happened like so early on, and then it's kind of done with. You know what I'm saying? Gretchen, what do you kind of make of this whole side of it?
To me, it read as he is the typical chosen one, magically chosen protagonist. And the reason why he's the chosen one is never like fully explained. But I was like, you know what? Honestly, I'm fine with that from the position of like, we see this all the time.
Yeah.
And they're rarely Black characters. So I like the idea that, like this is a pretty typical, like, shallow maybe reason for why he's suddenly like this special character, but it's fine. It was fine with me. And I guess my hope would be, because Samuel's gone and the lodge is gone, but he knows that's his birthright, I'd hope that he is going to eventually learn magic. Maybe even bring back George. I think that's my big hope, or figure out how to fight Christina. I mean, like, it doesn't seem like she's totally an antagonist by the end, but that she's around, and she was fine with manipulating them. So I hope he figures it out. We have like a little, Indiana Jones / Harry Potter protagonist here, and I'm ready to see where it goes.
Well, that's the I guess that's sort of the thing with this, is like his whole MO from the beginning is that he's wanted to go on the adventures that he was never he never saw representation in, I guess, throughout his entire life. And so it's like now being able to go on it, it's like, I kind of like how you put it. It's like, okay, yeah, we've seen the whole chosen one thing before, but we haven't necessarily seen it with a Black protagonist like this. And so I feel like it was necessary to do some of that. And maybe that was sort of their thinking, was that, okay, we get this out of the way because everyone's seen it early on. Then it can allow us to explore some interesting things, in future episodes. But I don't know, Elliott, what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, no, again, like Gretchen was saying, that early exposition dump that we get from William while they're touring around the house, which I thought I was extremely bored with. I don't know, the William character so far is very like vanilla character, and just like
good.
He looks like a script. He looks like a human script. And just we're reading it off of him. Like, he has no characteristics to me at all. But as he's explaining Titus and everything of nature, I kind of immediately went to, and it ties back to the conversation that Montrose and Uncle George were having on the bed, which I did not catch this on the first watch. I caught it last night.
Okay.
So when he's and also because I don't have subtitles with it being the early screener, and the ADR and all that stuff is kind of jarring at times. But that was so bad. And ADR was so like
and answer this for me, because I have only seen the screener. Do they? Well, actually, I don't know. Has anyone seen
I guess it's currently on now.
I went back and watched half of the real one, because I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah. Did they use that Marilyn Manson song in the middle of it?
Yes.
Why? That was so bad. What was that all about?
Oh boy.
That's the other thing, and we kind of touched on this last week, and I know, Gretchen, you and I have talked about it. Yeah, the music choices are bizarre. It's like, do we want to ride that like Baz Luhrmann like post-contemporary, like, well, I don't even know what the hell you would call it, retro contemporary type thing, or do we want to like actually double down on being like a period piece? Like, it's so confusing. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah.
No. I was just saying in regards to the, I guess a big reveal was Uncle George telling Montrose that Atticus might not be his son, which kind of made me kind of think, okay, is Atticus maybe not born of natural birth? Is he like was given to Dora, I think was his mom name, and Montrose? So it kind of made me start thinking about that and his true parents. So, which again we talked about last week, J.J. Abrams and parents, and who's the real parents of the kid.
I know.
It's a trope of his.
It's like,
it works sometimes and doesn't other times, but yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of funny. It's like, I have no idea how involved he is creatively. I know this is Misha Green's show. Yeah. She's the showrunner, but like that, I mean, it's hard to kind of like beat around the bush. Like it does feel like JJ did have some input in some of the stuff. It's like, especially the mystery box stuff. And then also like the lineage of whatnot.
Atticus Skywalker. I'm telling you guys now. Episode 10. Atticus Skywalker. It's coming, guys.
Oh my gosh. Tick Skywalker. And then we also got our, you mentioned Montrose. We also got our first look at Michael K. Williams playing Tick's father. Yeah. Just barely scratched the surface in terms of that, and I assume that the next episode and then episode 4 is really going to dive deeper into their relationship, but it doesn't look like they're on good terms. So what do you guys sort of think is the point of contention there for them?
I think it really boils down to he's taking care of this kid that's not really his, and it seems like him and Montrose and Uncle George had that understanding. We're not to talk about this again, but maybe it's just a sense of like, again, this isn't his child. He's been raising his child for however many years, and they just never had that internal bond. He was just, a dad, not a father. So I think there's a little bit of issues there, and we still don't know the mystery of his mother. Maybe his mother left because of Atticus, and there was fights around this child that's not his. So yeah, there's a lot of tension there. I love Michael K. Williams. I love the first time we see him, he's crawling out of the ground and just like, we're here to save you. I didn't tell you to come in to say that. I thought that he was really a new mixture to add to the group, but he's a great actor. So I hope they didn't kill him off anytime soon. And we get a little bit more backstory with him.
Yeah, for sure. Gretchen.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And I think that they talked a little bit about Atticus's issues with his dad in episode 1. Like when he was talking to George, I think he did mention his dad didn't like that he joined the army because then you're fighting for America, but like America doesn't even care about you. So why would you fight for them? And then they also mentioned really briefly in episode 1 that his father really disapproved of his love of H.P. Lovecraft. Right. Because obviously Lovecraft was a terrible racist. Yeah. So I think in Montrose's eyes, I guess Atticus is kind of like a sellout or something. Like he's not being really true to his culture or something because he's like letting these other racist sources into his life. I don't really know.
Interesting. Okay.
It seems like he just generally disapproves of Atticus, like kind of navigating even a little bit in like white culture.
Good point.
So we'll see how that plays out.
I mean, and to go off of Gretchen's point, even Montrose as a kid, his dad, he would have the signs to the Negro baseball players. And just early on, his dad was like, no, don't do that. So maybe that, that lack of love from his father just transcends to the next generation. So, but yeah, there's a lot to unfold with that character.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up. And again, kind of hearkening back to what I was saying last week, how I feel like his arc in this show is like the perfect companion piece to like Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods that came out earlier this year. It's, I mean, truthfully tackling on a lot of similar issues. And then also like seeing Michael K. Williams now brought into the fold, it feels like they'll probably touch on that generational divide as well, because I think that's the thing. Because like in the first episode, Tick's talking about the fact that like, he's like, yeah, I'm aware these people are horrible racists or whatnot, but their work allows my creativity and my imagination to sort of like take flight so that I can interpret it as I see fit. And so it's like, you're right. Like people are seeing it as like a betrayal of their own culture and of their own people and whatnot. But in actuality, I feel like it's just Tick culture, getting cultured in just like different facets and whatnot so that he can, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some storyline in here where he wants to become like a creative, like, author or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like some of the stuff in there with like him, wanting to go on these adventures, wanting more representation in like pop culture and media at the time. I feel like it might go in that direction. I don't know. That feels like a little too on the nose, but I don't know. It was just nonetheless, it was a very sort of like interesting dynamic between the two. Anyways, so I guess before we sort of close this out, what are there any sort of like final things in the episode that you wanted to touch on specifically, starting with you, Gretchen?
Oh gosh. Well, I am looking forward to seeing how people react to episode 3. I don't know if you guys watched like the teaser for next week, but because it looks like it's going to be a very different episode. It looks like they're back home, and
Right.
they're going to obviously have to go talk to George's wife about what happened. I would be interested to see how they react to that. But other than the episode itself, it stands as it stands. I think we're just going to have to see how all of those various things that they drop in our laps are going to play out.
Yeah, for sure. Elliott?
I think the only other thing I can think of is just, again, we got a little bit of behind the doors in regards to behind the scenes, I say, with the creation of the monsters that Christina and the Braithwhites, they have control of the monsters. As we see, they birth them and they control them with the whistle. So it seems, I don't know if they'll play a part into the future episodes where they can use the creatures to their advantage to fight a bigger, badder Samuel character. And also, I guess, with the destruction of the home, was that all the members of the Sons of Adam? Was it just a couple members there? Are they still out there? Is it an underground society of these members that weren't wiped out in the destruction of the home? And then also Gretchen pointed towards, maybe Atticus having some magical powers again with that whole scene. It looked like he fought off whatever Samuel was doing, and he has this essence in him that he can manipulate magic, like Gretchen was saying, and have the abilities to bring people back to life. And I guess that's another thing I was I'm talking about off screen. Leti being brought back to life. Is she going to be normal? We all know when people come back from the dead. We all know Pet Sematary, how that went. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any after effects of her dying and coming back to life. And does she see the afterlife? Is she going to have any abilities? So the door is open. It was like I said, the ending to me was strong. I thought that moment when Atticus saw Uncle George die, it's just all in the eyes. There's not a lot of words spoken. Leti just she didn't say a word. She just, they looked at each other and he knew he was dead. And I'm sorry, Uncle George, getting him in the mess. So the emotional impact at the end really kind of saves this episode from being very kind of lackluster and confusing and jarring and all that stuff. So the door's still open for things to come, but this was definitely nowhere near superior as the first episode.
No, I completely agree. I'm glad you brought up the fact that the third act basically saved this entire episode, because I agree with you. And it felt very long-winded in just sort of what it was doing. It was long-winded, but it had way too much to convey. And so it just kind of felt like it never really went anywhere, and they had too many ideas that they wanted to bring up that would have been better served had they sparsed it out among between multiple episodes and whatnot.
Right.
I am curious as to what's going to happen with Christina going forward. I have to imagine it's not the last that we've seen of her, just because why would they spend all that time kind of using her and having those interactions with Tick if they're not going to bring her back in any capacity?
Yeah,
it could be interesting to see other sort of branches of the Sons of Adam pop up, maybe a KKK sort of thing. And again, in Jim Crow America, they're fighting not only Lovecraft monsters, but the monsters of the era and so forth. And if they have the ability to kind of control these monsters, then I don't know. I have to imagine that there will be other branches, and when they get word of what's happened, then maybe they'll try and go after them. I have no idea. That they really kind of ended it at a place where, okay, so the mission that we were set out to accomplish in the first episode is now completed. We can literally go anywhere. And as Gretchen was kind of telling us before we started recording, because she has seen all 5 episodes of the screeners, it kind of turns into an anthology series. And I think you get a sense of that in the in the teaser for next week. So, which is, it's kind of a bummer because like the Monsters of the Week thing is like, it's cool, but like I really liked the singular adventure that they were on. I want more of the quest, you know, give me Indiana Jones on Sunday nights in this weird like Lovecraftian but like socially like relevant series and whatnot. I don't know. I'm just kind of bummed out that it's going in that direction. I don't know if either of you have any strong feelings about that, but
yeah, I mean, it sounds like Gretchen was telling us earlier. It sounds like a very unique take from the, like you said, the novel being anthology, different characters, different stories. So I'm hoping that we don't get too attached to these characters, and we're introducing new characters and they're dying by the end of the episode, and so on and so forth. So I hope that the acting, the direction is still strong enough where we can care for these characters, and hopefully we can look back on episode 2 and say, oh yeah, episode 2 is when Atticus learned that he had powers, or that's when So hopefully we look back on these maybe not so strong episodes like episode 2 that planted the seeds for, you know, future episodes to unfold.
Yeah. I will say it gets stronger. Like out of the 5 episodes, episode 2 by far the weakest. Okay. It definitely picks up from 3 to 5. Yeah. There is a through line, a story. It's just like it kind of takes a backseat a little bit to the characters. But to be clear, she is going to come back. There are going to be like, you know, actual plot lines that are going to lead throughout the season. So not to mislead people that it's a completely separate story. Yeah. So
interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited for future episodes, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like an appetizer.
Okay, well, good. I'm assuming that you know, after they have like a couple of singular adventures in the middle of the season, it'll sort of start to wrap back around and whatnot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it still hasn't lost me yet, even though I'm only 2 episodes in. I still am just really interested in the world and what's going to happen with these characters. And I feel like, I almost feel like in a way by doing this, like in the 2nd episode, it just kind of like opens the doors for endless possibilities. So, I don't know. We'll have to see in future weeks what's going to go down here. But guys, the most important thing is, what do you all think? What do you make of this very cryptic episode? Let us know down in the comments section below. Are you still confused? Are you gonna be like rewatching this episode and picking it apart, breaking it down and whatnot? We want to hear about it down there as well. Thank you to my 2 guests for joining me on this episode. Gretchen, where can everyone find you?
On Twitter, it's Gretchen_Smail, and I'm also on Bustle, Nerdist, IGN sometimes, so I'm around.
She publishes great work consistently, and I always say that every time you're on because it's true. It's so good. Elliott, thank you for joining me again. As always, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, man, you can find me running from Batman because he's vengeance, and I don't want to catch any of those punches from Robert Pattinson's Batman. But no, you guys can find me on YouTube at Movie Files, Instagram Movie Files, Twitter Movie Files Live, Stardust, and Letterboxd at Movie Files as well. But again, Gretchen, it's such a pleasure meeting you, and Griffin's always great talking to you. So this was fun, guys. Hopefully, like you said, moving on up for episode 4 and 5 going forward. So yeah.
Oh man, I'm really hoping, man. But remember when everyone was making fun of Robert Pattinson about not working out, and then he just flat out beat that guy to a pulp? Oh my God. First of all, it's a Warner Brothers property, so we can talk about it, I guess, on here. But go watch the trailer for the Batman. It's just, oh my God, it's so good. I'm sure many of you have already. But anyways, thanks, guys, as always, for watching. If you haven't done so already, be sure to like this video, share it with your Lovecraft Country loving friends, and then also be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss another episode of our Lovecraft Country recaps and all sorts of other movie and television related content that we have going on over here. You can like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching FilmSpeak, and then lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's going to do it for this recap of Lovecraft Country Season 1, Episode 2, and we'll catch you back here next week. Take care.